Hey everyone, can people hear and see me? Hey guys. So start throwing me your questions. Remember, when you ask a question, uh, put a few question marks, a whole bunch in front and behind so I can see them visually, or even just a few asterisks, um, just so it's easy for me to see what's a question and what is just you guys having a chat. One thing I wanted to ask you guys as like an open-ended question was, I was thinking about this the other day. Why do generally in relationships and women in general, why do they pay so much attention to occasions? I know myself and other guys, we tend to forget anniversaries, even our own. It's not that we don't care about women's, but generally even our own. I forget dates where I was supposed to do something, or it's been 1 year since blah blah blah. Why do you think that women pay so much attention to these anniversaries, occasions, such and such as birthdays now, and so and so it's 5 years since whoever passed away, and whether it's good or bad, they've always got a really keen sense of latching on to sort of the calendar. One thing I immediately thought of was uh, their cycle, their period. They always got sort of something that's cyclical, like they keep note of dates. Whereas with us, we really don't need to keep note of any date as a guy. It's just something I thought of. Why do women, they're so sort of attuned to dates, anniversaries, occasions, whether it's positive or negative, a good occasion or a bad occasion, they can always remember the date. And yeah, I always felt like I can never remember it, and most guys I know can't either. Anyway, something to think about. All right. I don't know about political questions, so no idea if you ask me about those. Politics, I really don't care too much about. Sorry, don't know enough to answer it. Are dating apps worth it? I think less and less as time goes on. They're kind of dating apps. Dating apps, I think, used to be legitimately what you think they are, what they appear to be. You want to meet people, you go out there, and the intent, you're on there temporarily, and then you go out, and then you get off it. It's kind of a necessary thing you get on, and then you leave it behind. Whereas I think because of social media now, dating apps have become feeds, and you don't want to get off the social media feeds. So dating apps have become social media, and you don't want to get off. That's why very few people can get together. It's You have your freedom, you have your independence, and you have this potential ongoing forever dating life that continues in perpetuity. So I think without realizing it, most people don't feel comfortable getting off because it feels so fun. There's the potential of hundreds, especially for women, hundreds of suitors. Why would you just settle for one? Um, who was your MGTOW influence? Well, in terms of this material, the realities between men and women, relationships between them, It wasn't MGTOW per se. In the 90s, it was the comic book author Dave Sim. He wrote an essay called Tangent, and he was vilified by a lot of the comic book community for being a misogynist. But I remember when I read that, that knocked me on my ass because it was so honest. And then that got me down the rabbit hole. What is the meaning of life? I used to know the answer to this. Let me get back to you. Am I in focus this time? This is one thing I changed. Last time on the live stream, I put my camera on manual focus just because I didn't want it to hunt in and out. But then I was out of focus most of the time. So hopefully this looks better. And also there's, if you notice, like it's really wide. I'm using one of those lenses that real estate agents use that you can see a lot of the room. But as a consequence, it crushes me. I look really thin, but it allows me to get really close to the camera, microphone. I can adjust the camera. The camera's only like a hand's length away from me, whereas the other lenses I use are sort of like a whole arm's length away, if not more. So that's why this looks the way it looks. I'm in your face. How do we find our purpose in general? Too big a question. I would just concentrate on what makes you happy, what you like doing, as simple as that. Purpose and happiness, that comes as a consequence of doing what you know is right, I think. My theory in terms of happiness and purpose and all that kind of stuff is doing what you know is right, doing what you think is true and honest and all that kind of just basic stuff from your perspective is like you getting on stage and performing it as honestly as you can. And then the applause from the audience is happiness and fulfillment and all that kind of stuff. So think of it that way. This is what I think anyway, is happiness and fulfillment is you doing a job well, you doing something that's honest and true and all that kind of stuff. Okay, what are your worthy goals to, my Lord, self-actualize? Well, I think I just answered some of that there. Do you think MGTOW would have in past times made excellent partners and fathers? After all, it appears MGTOW are mostly acutely aware of the importance of traditional roles. Yeah, I think so. Most of the non-spurgy, level-headed, intelligent conversations regarding MGTOW, yeah, I think they would be really good fathers. The heavy-handed extremist guys, I think they'd be the wife beaters. Oh, that'll get me demonetized, jeez. So you can't even say something that doesn't actually mean what it means. In Australia, wife beaters are singlets. How do you pronounce human? I just say human, like the word. Some people accentuate the man at the end. I did it just as a sort of a clever thing visually, but some people accentuate the man, but no, I just call it human. Hey Spetsnaz, how you going, man? What does trust in a relationship mean to you? Ooh, that's a good one. I think I mentioned in my previous video, I've come to the conclusion that the things I value in a woman is the same things I value in a man. And that is that sort of ability to relate to a person in front of you, sort of be honest, keep your word, mean what you say. I constantly have these conversations with women in my life, family members and things like that, where they think it's quite normal and I should not overthink things like, for instance, when you go to pay for a dinner or a meal or whatever it might be if you're on a date, where I said one thing I can't stand is when a woman offers to pay and she doesn't mean it. And my family members, all of them unanimously, are against me on that. They say, well, that's just the nice thing to do. I say, it's not nice if you don't mean it. If you don't mean it, don't say it. I said, I'll be happy to pay if I take you out for a coffee. It's no big deal if I don't know you yet. But don't continually pull out your purse with no intention at all of paying. It's happened to me countless times on first dates or second dates where she'll offer to pay and I'll say no, and she'll keep insisting. And I think on one or two occasions I remember I didn't eat anything. I wasn't hungry. I just had like a coffee or a drink, but they ate. And they offered to pay and they said, no, I ate, you didn't. And okay, I took a bit of money. I didn't get them to pay the whole thing. Then you never see them again. And the family members and women that I know say, well, of course, a woman doesn't like it. It's kind of a sense of security, like if she can rely on you and take care of you. And I just think it's a load of shit. It's like, I look for honesty in terms of honor, like a guy. Don't pretend to mean those important things that would actually build trust and honor around you, that I would be able to rely on you. Don't portray them as false. If you keep lying about them, I can never take any steps forward in building in any kind of trust. So trust is built over time. It's something that's earned. So with men or women, I think with men it probably is easier over time because it's very rare that you hear of or that you even personally experience, which is the most important thing, that guys, as you build that trust over time with friends and people you can count on, it's very rare that that's betrayed in the simplest form, where if you trust a guy over time to a certain degree and then all of a sudden you think of them because you trust them to that degree, hey, I'm going to call Joe to help me out with this. Joe usually helps you. They react in a way that you trust them. Whereas with women, it's never the case. It's always kind of, not always, but mostly like eggshells, or you're never quite sure. You have to always be schmoozing them. It's always recycling the dating process with them. With most relationships, some people tell you have to continually date your partner or your wife in perpetuity to make sure that the relationship's good. But I don't subscribe to that anymore. As you get older, you just care about the human being being a human being, being as honest as you are, as honest as my friends and family are. That's all I care about. I don't care about that game, and apparently women don't either, but they still love playing it, like the paying for dinner horse shit. Anyway, what is your view on climate change? I don't know. I care and I don't care. Ask Greta. Sorry. I am responsible, but when we talk about these massive collective issues where there's really nothing to be done because everyone's fighting, I really don't have much interest because I can't actually do much. I mean, the funny thing is that the only thing I'll point out is with the climate change people is that usually in science, well, not usually, always in science, it's shown when CO2 levels rise, temperature rises. But with climate change, temperature rose, then CO2 rose. So yeah, go figure. They can't seem to answer that one. Given any thought to the small window of women from a generation worth dating, for example, in 5 years, 35-year-olds are the 27-year-old social crazies now? Yeah, the kind of everything keeps getting protracted out. There used to sort of be more or less a social cutoff date where, not to shame you out of it, but then, for instance, people could act their age more, like in their 20s, because they were the most fertile. But now you've got sort of women in their 30s and 40s encroaching on 20-something-year-old women's potential mates. So in the past, the only way a man could really, in a normative way in society, be with a woman and sleep with her was to go through steps that were a bit more honourable to get to that, to get to the intimacy that he wanted. But then by the time he did that, he'd form some sort of bond usually. And it was only the outliers, the extremes of men and women, but usually men, that would be the chads, the people that would just throw people away and do that in perpetuity. And now people are making lives out of it, just continually going through your life as a guy, pumping and dumping, which is, it's like anything. You can sort of do it for a short amount of time, as ripping a band-aid off after a divorce, or to sort of to do it, to experience it. But to do it in a never-ending way, I think is, you wake up centuries later and you go, what the hell have I done with my life? Or at the very least, it's not fun anymore. This is the thing. It also, in the end, not that there's mistrust between men and women, right, over time, and your experiences and how they treat you might cause you to sort of drift apart in terms of sex, the sexes. But also over time, if the only way you're relating is as though you're sort of going into a burger joint and getting a burger and going back, getting a burger, and it's just kind of really rudimentary. It's just really banal. It's not exciting anymore. Sex isn't as exciting as it used to be. You can go online and find anything you want. And when the stuff online, your life online, actually is more exciting now, because there's much more variety and you get exactly what you want. And in comparison to the real thing's kind of boring. This is the hard thing as we get older. Like for myself, I don't really date that often anymore. But when I do, I really notice in myself the low level of interest I have. For me, it's more going out to sort of have a bit of company. But I'm always curious to sort of see, is there a nice person in front of me? Is there a kind person? Is there a personality? Fuck. And that is missing, because you go through decades of putting on the boyfriend, girlfriend potential roles, and you're going out there and you're acting roles, like trying to get to know each other. Like, when you go to job interviews, you don't act like yourself. You act in this fake way to impress, and both sides are doing it. Imagine doing it for decades, and at the end of it, you just don't care anymore. At the end of the day, I think women need to understand, especially for guys middle age and getting older like me, is that it's not even pussy anymore. It's just more ass. It's just boring. And if there's no personality there that matches with mine, I don't care. I've got a good life. Why would I let in something that's not good? I did it for a few decades, so not interesting anymore. I don't even know if I answered the question then. All right, let's get this show on the road. If marriage is at an all-time low and divorce is at an all-time high between men and women, why would people still worry about gay people? Exactly. I mean, truth here, I suppose when I was young and naive, just like with women or with anything in life, teens and 20s, and you go off your family's like old-fashioned. Whenever I would see or hear about gay guys and I didn't sort of know any in my life, I'd be kind of like, because just by dint of my heterosexuality, I'm not into it. It's kind of like my body sort of reacts to it because it's not me. And in case you didn't know by some of the music in my videos, I was heavily into the dance rave culture in my 20s. And a lot of gay guys, cross-dressers, transvestites. It was a circus in there. And whenever I talk to them and interact, and I had some friends there that were gay and so forth, when they got close, and I had once or twice where some of them tried to pick me up, the hair stood up at the back of my neck. And I like these guys, I like these people. But my body naturally reacted against it. It's kind of like, oh God, this feels awful. And it's just a natural reaction. But over time, I actually got to respect in terms of them being who they were. And as I got older, I saw that in a parallel way. Like, I mean, look at these gay men. Good for them being who they are and standing up for it. And look at what they have to risk socially with their families and so forth. And it's kind of like I had a lot of respect over time for them. Not my life, but had a lot of respect and still do. And then I look at women where most of them don't know who they are. They keep playing this game. They say they don't want to play games, yet they keep playing games. Everything from the moment they wake up to when they put their makeup on, their clothes, their aloofness when they are interacting with guys. They don't actually get what they want. If they like a guy, they don't tell him. Or, the women's version of dating is just to place themselves in front of a guy and pretend to be looking at the sky and going, I hope he looks at me. I hope he looks at me. And, you're pretending you don't care. That's her life. So I don't envy women at all. But in terms of honesty, I much more respect gay men than I do the average heterosexual woman in terms of the way they act, in terms of how they live, in terms of an honest, actionable way where you go, like everything I'm doing consciously. I see that a lot more with gay men, whatever you might think about their lifestyle, as opposed to the average woman who sort of acts and frustrates herself and can't get what she wants and is always passive. And talk to so many women in my life, past and present, and they'll say things that sort of add to knowing why they're frustrated, where they'll say, I like this guy and I kept giving him signals but he never did anything. It's like, what a way to live. Like you're always frustrated because you just won't say what you want. You won't speak up. You won't voice what you want. And it's nothing to do with, well, society tells us you got one life. You keep thinking that way and you'll die, never having spoken up or done anything or feel powerless. Well, you can keep blaming the world, men or women, but especially women, their passivity. At the end of the day, you can keep being annoyed that the world isn't handing you everything you want because they can't read your mind, or you can actually speak up and you can tell people what you think. You can tell that guy that you like him, but they don't like rejection. So what are you going to do? But not my life. The meaning of life is what you make it. Yep. Are we headed towards a prolonged dark age? Don't know, but I think what's happening now is going to continue for a while. I'm no good at predictions, unless it's obvious. I predict it'll get dark later. Were there any young guys in your personal life that you tried to mentor through the years? No, not one or two guys that I was talking to as a project to try and help them. I never had anyone really helping me. My search was not to find a mentor, because I didn't sort of conceptualize that till later. And by that time, I'd already learnt a lot myself. And I found when I was talking to guys, I could see I knew some answers more than they did. And then I had by my own accord, read more, observed more, been interested more. And then as I was talking to these guys about these subjects, I found there's like, yeah, why didn't I have anyone like that? I would have really appreciated some kind of guy like, not me, I'm not talking in a grandiose way, but some kind of older guy, or like a bigger brother or something, where they would look out for me in terms of information and tell me like, consider this, don't do this, don't do that. So I think many guys, and it's not just because of the single mother thing, it's just you just don't grow up around men very much. If you do, they're on the outskirt, like a father that's always at work or is never really in your life, that he mentors you. And I think in psychological and philosophical terms, they kind of say there's a point, it's usually around early adulthood, somewhere around the late teens or mid-teens, where a boy looks for a second father. He severs the cord earlier on with his mother, but then later with his actual father, to find himself via being mentored by a greater father, But there's none of that beforehand. And then because of the censorship in society, you can't even find this kind of conversation. You really, really have to dig. And a lot of it's due to luck. And depending on what kind of luck you come across, like you could come across someone like myself or Spetsnaz or Stardust, or sort of more level-headed, mature guys, and then you can come across guys as frustrated as you, and you feel good because you can identify with them. But really, are you guys digging yourselves out of your hole, or are you continually just digging yourselves into a deeper and deeper hole because it's familiar? I got tired of doing that in the past. Again, I recognize it's a necessity for guys to have that venting moment, the get out of Shawshank moment of, red pill rage and sort of busting out of the gates and screaming, that you were unfairly treated and all that, but then to kind of want to go backwards and repeat it again and again and again. I think it energizes you, but in the long run, it deteriorates you. Will the powers that be impose a bachelor tax, like during Roman times? Probably, but they won't call it that. They'll do it in another way. It wouldn't surprise me, really. I mean, look at guys like me, never had kids, not married. I don't spend a lot of money. My life is simple. Don't have child support. Got my own home. I've got a car. I'm free and clear. I don't spend a lot. The things that make my life worth living are, family and the friends I've got. But in terms of my life here, I've got it all. I've got my space. I've got my little toys, and I've got pens and paper, and I can write, and there's actually nothing I need. So guys like me in an economic dead end, if everyone was like me, the world would stand still. People like me don't lubricate the financial system. They need guys to say, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they start saying, people like Human, like there's this dip where it comes to him, like we've got to get him to pay more. Learn anything new from the last Q&A, new insights? Technically, yeah, in terms of this probably looks better than last time. Last time was a test case, but I actually enjoyed doing it. And I think that I actually like hanging out with you guys, and I like, even when I do my videos, I am hanging out with you guys. And as I mentioned, I'm enjoying doing the thing that I never got. And I think a lot of men's today therapy can be avoided if they can just hang out with guys more often and just talk about stuff without getting angry. Getting together with your friends in real life, especially, nothing beats getting together with actual people. But if you can't, this stuff is invaluable, especially. Like, I wouldn't, like, to be honest, even in my life now, there are maybe one, maybe two if I'm generous, but generally one guy I can talk about this on this level with, maybe two. It's hard because you don't want to force it. You want it to be organic. You don't want to manufacture sort of, calling out personalities that fit with mine who are into this sort of stuff and want to talk about life. It doesn't happen. So I actually went out and I was tired of it, and I said, I'm gonna find my friends. I'm gonna find conversations. I'm gonna find people I can express things with, understand myself and life better, and that's why I created my channel. That's why I do this stuff. So I'm doing it for me, but the great benefit and the great consequence of it is I share it with you guys, and it goes back and forth in terms of conversation. That's the beauty of it. Like, this is why they sometimes ask you in terms of art, or when you create something, like videos, I say, if it's just for you, then why do you need to publish it? It's so you can have a conversation. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself on your own, like Nietzsche with his pigeons. You don't want to go mad. That's the other thing, like talking with others lets you kind of know that it's real in some way. I mean, I know this is harder, but because of the feedback and the people you do connect with, this stuff is important. Like I said, most guys, their mental issues and anxieties, most guys I don't think need to go to therapy. They just need better friends and guys to speak to. Guys, I've noticed, good friends, good guys to speak to, we can settle our world in a way women don't, because women compete with each other on that personal level. Men one-on-one, we don't compete with each other. We sort of go back and forth. The guy sitting across you, if you get along, you're very much on the same side. Women are always in opposition. They sort of notice like a word, they always take it the wrong way. So I don't know why they're like that, but they're very different. Well, look at the fact that guys could just get together and watch sport on TV for half the day and they barely say anything to each other, and they have a great time. Whereas if women get together and they don't say anything, they go insane. They're constantly kind of picking at each other. Anyway. How old were you when you were red-pilled? Was it gradual or sudden? Gradual. My eyes started to get... I was really frustrated around 30, late 20s, 30s. I started to read a lot in my early 30s. So it was a gradual. I think from 30 to 40 was like a very steep, gradual exposure and learning to all this stuff. Is it better to be awakened after so many years or just stay blue-pilled and keep sleeping? If your life is relatively content, I would say for a lot of guys it's better to sort of stay apathetic to it. As I've mentioned in the video, if it's just like low-level irritation like everyone else, like you're annoyed about things that are just par for the course, like if you go to the gym or you go for a run and you say, like, oh, I'm really tired after that, that's just expected because you go for a run. Same with, like, if you're in a traditional life, that's what you get. But if you're deteriorating, if you have a sense of this is wrong, I'm dying here, I'm not supposed to be here, what have I done? That's very different. So for most guys, I say, especially if you don't have an interest in this kind of stuff, you don't read, you're not introspective, I think the idea of red pill knowledge and MGTOW and all that is just a romantic ideal. And then when you get it, it's like, oh, what the hell have I done? Like, can I go back? But then a lot of times when people are awakened like that, they take the red pill, it's kind of like You burnt a bridge. Once you see things, you can't unsee them. And then especially if you burnt that bridge and you told your past life to get lost and you're going to forge your way and do all this, it's kind of like an irreversible operation. It's kind of like you had a sex change. It's kind of like, oh shit, I regret this now. It's like in a lot of ways, guys who get awakened by a lot of this stuff, they can't be plugged back in. You know, the whole Neo thing. You know, once you're unplugged, you can't plug someone back in, really. Oh, okay, Cypher could, I suppose, but did he? Was he? It's probably a lie. Have you ever dealt with body insecurities, low height, penis size, stuff you can't change, and how do you get over them? Stuff I can't change, maybe it's just me. It's a relief because I can't do anything about it. Like, it doesn't bother me. But the stuff I know can be changed is malleable. That's what frustrates me. I have my own problems concerning that. I'm a perfectionist and I always try and fix stuff I can. But when I don't, I kind of like, oh well, it's not real because I can't fix it. So it almost doesn't exist. But again, it might be me. It might be me in particular. So I know everyone's different. Have I missed any questions? I'll just keep going. Is the sound still okay, guys? The funny thing is I'm using a different microphone. The microphone I usually use is twice the price of this, but this one still sounds the best, on my voice anyway. Have you any experiences and or advice for these guys in regards to narcissistic personalities? Yep. Be very wary of them. But also, today it's thrown around like clinical diagnoses are too casually thrown around without actually being clinically diagnosed. I think 95% of the time, what people describe as narcissist is just an arsehole. But it sort of elevates the status of a base, just moron, to, oh, this person's got narcissism. It's new, it's polished. You know, they've got this, it's almost like it belongs in the realm of Hannibal Lecter, but he's social. He's got this weird, it's almost, it adds like a high IQ, a higher IQ than it should, to what in most cases is just an arsehole. But yeah, generally, I don't know, just with, because generally people, narcissists just, it's a one-way street with them. It's all about them. They use you, they deplete you, and then they throw you away. Just notice in yourself, if you're a people pleaser, notice, again, that's why I focus a lot about you, the person, and secondarily, how you relate to the world and other people, how much you give, your boundaries and so forth. If you're a people pleaser, narcissists target in on you. They read you and then they slowly drain you. So notice if you're that kind of person that just is always trying to be too nice and please everybody, and it might go back to your childhood, but you'll have to sort of look into that, is always look at that fairness. Am I continually giving? You know, I'm always giving, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. They barely give one, or they get angry at me if I dare suggest or nudge them that they should give me one or, half a step forward. Just notice those things about you. Don't be a continual, what you give is never ending. Just don't be tit for tat. Don't keep score. But when there's an instinct, and there's something to do with male intuition that guys don't actually listen to because they think it's all feelings, and women do that, so I won't pay attention to my feelings. But men's feelings are their intuition. So pay attention to that. If your intuition is saying like, oh, I'm always doing this for her, and whenever she doesn't do anything for me, or I ask her to do something, it's like pulling teeth and it's hard work. Notice those really big discrepancies. That's all I'd say. Notice the blatant unfairness. Notice when the seesaw is tipped so far up to her side and you get nothing. You're always down and you're always trying and trying, and whatever you do is never enough. Notice those things rather than these clinical definitions. You can get lost in those sometimes. You can avoid actually what's there, which is just this person's an arsehole. I don't want to be around them. I don't care if they're narcissistic or not. Who gives a crap? Is that going to make you feel better? Will it excuse your your lack of boundaries and saying, well, it wasn't my fault. She was clinically diagnosed as a narcissist. It's like gets you off the hook somehow. But like, no, beforehand, whether they are or not, shouldn't matter. Have your own boundaries and have your own morals and ethics. Whatever anyone else has, not your problem, man. What's your problem about someone owning a sex doll? Doesn't bother me. Don't care. I don't see it as any more of a bigger deal than a woman owning a vibrator. Where do you think Western civilization is headed given the wholesale gynocentric takeover? Too big a question, don't know. I mean, would we have predicted the world being where it is now? I mean, it's nice to think about, but I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Again, I tend to be interested, for good or bad. I think it's more for good, about my immediate life, what just happened, what I can learn from, and what is coming up tomorrow, what I can prepare for, but not who am I going to be in 5 years from now and lamenting who I was 5 years before. I try and stay as much in the present sort of chronology as I can. Red Pill Tokyo, hey man. I recall some talks regarding more recent MGTOW content lacking some qualities. If you could have an idea such idea, or is it ideal reach or current and prospective content producers, what would it be? In terms of, I know times have changed and people are not interested in the handles in talking points that really resonated with a lot of us guys that actually grew that corner of the manosphere was more intelligent conversation. And it's not so much about what's been talked about already. It's fine to keep talking about the same things, but talk about them while thinking about them in your own way. And not just repeating. I just see guys, even in the comments section, they don't say anything. They, word for word, convey quotes and memes. That's how they speak to you. I'll say something in my video about a topic that's everyone knows, right? But I'll talk about, like, if you notice, I talk about things that aren't sort of groundbreakingly new, but they're things we kind of know, suspect, but I'll talk about them directly. And it's like, oh, that's an interesting way to see things. That clarifies things. And maybe this means this now. Now I can see how this connects to this. That's what I mean. That's what I think has been lost, is the introspective concept connection between bits of life. Excuse me. I don't think topics are missing or should be discussed about. I think thinking is missing. That's the one thing that's missing from the older school days. And it's not that old. It's not like within the last decade. How it's dropped off is just the interest, because it's grown. A lot of guys are angry, but they're not angry enough to get calm and get serious about thinking. So you're not serious. If you just want to spurg out, like playing video games and keep throwing stones at the world, then you're having fun. When you've had enough, I think, is when you get serious. When you get serious is when you start thinking about yourself, especially, and what you're going to do. If you don't really have to do anything, i.e. go your own way, then it's just easy to throw stones and get angry and keep pointing back 5 years and like, oh yeah, let me tell you my old story again, what so-and-so did to me and how she, pulled one over on me and how, okay, keep doing that until you die. I mean, I'm not being glib where I don't care, but I really do wish for guys to have good lives. I don't want to talk about what the government's doing or what Trump or protesters like protesting any horse shit. Like, there's things that are important, but people don't care about their own lives, making their own lives better. Get your own life great, and then you can go out in the world and protest with other people who are whole and secure and they know themselves. If you got children out there sort of worrying about penguins and, the climate and, some celebrity or leader and what they might do in the next year or two. So yeah, the thinking is the thing, the qualities that's lacking in content. But in terms of, I think there's a great opportunity, Red Pill Tokyo, in terms of the intellectual content. I think there's an opportunity with the new group of guys in this generation is simply having intelligent conversations like this. This is something that we didn't have in the past. It was all very kind of stoically kind of passed on like it was historically, almost like read out, scripted. There's a lot of dense information, which is great, and we should be doing it. But there's a vacuum of this, of intelligent this, that doesn't really happen. And the degree to which this happens, sometimes all guys do is, I don't know, they're just kind of bitching about their past and they're throwing stones again. So I think the real opportunity is intelligent, real-time conversation, talking about important stuff and just hanging out with guys like this and talking like adults. I feel like my IQ is dropping with some people I watch, not you. Vocabulary is better than mine. This is the other thing, that if you're hanging out, if you're just streaming with guys that are spurging out and, playing video games and whatever, which is fine, but don't pretend you're doing this and you're talking and you're really trying to get to the deep questions and be philosophical when you're shooting people on screen or you're throwing stones at your ex or you're living in the past. If this is important, this is why I make the content I do. I try and associate with the people I do. I tend to, when I do have chats, if you notice, I'll have conversations with more intelligent people, not because I don't hang out with everyone, but I want to foster intelligence and this kind of conversation, because the enjoyment of this is the light bulbs and the elucidations that I get that make me feel like my life is better. Like I wake up in the morning with things to do. I have questions answered, or I'm constantly refining myself. I'm better than I was last year. That's fun for me. But momentarily avoiding life by, shooting things and like swearing and trolling and all that stuff is, I think there's a low level of anxiety, because as soon as you switch that off, the computer's off and you're alone in your home and you've got no friends and you don't know what to do and you don't like waking up, that should tell you, like you've actually gone backwards in some respects. So yeah, vocabulary. What's the first rule of chess? You only get smarter by playing a smarter opponent, or at the very least, when you want this, you want to be filled up and want to be filled up with meaningful stuff. You want to take your life seriously, so then you can play. Like, I like having fun as much as most people. I mean, I've created my life the way I want. I make my videos. I have a lot of fun doing them. But I make serious boundaries and I construct my life in a serious way. I take myself as an adult. Once they're set, I play as much as I want. I have a lot of fun. So when it's time to be serious, guys. That's what I'd suggest. And then you'll have better conversations. I only develop my lexicon by, yes, reading first and foremost. But if you've got no one to speak to that is intelligent enough to want to speak like this, you're not going to speak better. Like I said before, I wanted to always speak more like I wrote, because when I read my writing and then when I heard myself speaking, it was a vast difference. But over time, my real-time speaking has improved dramatically over the last couple of years because I've had the courage to actually speak more like this and seek out more intelligent conversations, whether you're younger or older. Again, which is why the conversation I want to foster in my comment section, the guys I have chats with, you'll notice it's all, I'm trying to have a connoisseurship of sort of a higher bar. And it doesn't mean someone needs to be intelligent. They need to be level-headed enough to be mature. That's all. You don't need to have sort of Elon Musk IQ or anything like that. I mean, I don't think I'm above average intelligence, but I'm not a genius. So hang around with non-trolly, non-spurgy people. If this stuff is important to you, you can't treat it like it's nothing. Either it's serious or it's meaningful to you, or it's not. If it's meaningful, how you speak will become meaningful. How you think will become meaningful. If it's not, if you don't care, well, you'll get the results of that. What can I tell you? I hope that answers the question. Got any job seeking advice? Like, no idea, man. No idea. Luckily, I've still got my job, but I don't know how long that'll last. It's kind of month to month, and they let everyone at the company know. Like, they keep reviewing things from month to month. Nice way to keep society on edge. Okay, any more questions, guys? Why do you show your face? Okay. Aside from the actual real thing of losing your job, right? Your livelihood, the money. Aside from that, I would ask everyone, why wouldn't you show your face and speak honestly? Because connecting it back a little bit to the last question about speaking well and taking this stuff seriously and taking yourself seriously, most importantly, and not just kind of hiding in entertainment, is if you really aren't worried about losing your job, why don't you show your face? Not that you need to, but think how much you're hiding and how much that adds to your frustrations. If the freedom in the manosphere, speaking honestly and all that stuff is important, and you're tired of like men never being listened to, and you don't feel like you have a voice and you're invisible, and well, how much are you fostering it in your own life? For me, the stuff I'm interested in and doing was always leaning itself towards honesty and me being more real towards myself and communicating that. So when I was hiding, I pushed it to the limits of saying what I wanted, but I knew that expressing more and showing more, for me is, I don't like lying, and I like being as honest as I can, because then I'm off the hook. Your anxiety's less. You got nothing to be worried about. You're more courageous simply by dint of being more honest and saying, okay, that's going to be a central pillar. If you hate the game playing out there, don't play games. So I wanted to show my face because it was important to me, because of what I'm communicating. If you're producing content that isn't revolved philosophically around this kind of say, honesty or introspection, I can't be philosophically introspective and then hide in a persona and put, not even use my voice and put on a robotic voice, like hide as much as possible and just be a message. And I know a lot of guys romanticize the Batman, be the symbol kind of thing, but I think that can be a trap, because then you're depersonalized, and the depersonalization of men in society is why we're in this spot. The less you depersonalize yourself, I think the more strength you have. That's me. Remember, guys, if you want to ask questions, type a whole bunch of question marks before and after your question so I can see them visually. Otherwise, I'll just think you guys are talking to each other, which is fine. Keep talking to each other, but just so I can zero in visually on the questions. Has feminism helped us become awakened or red-pilled? Should we be thankful for it? Yes, it has. It's I'm sure women think it's helped them be free in a cubicle and not have kids. But I think this is the thing people don't understand. Like, life in general is symbiotic, and especially between men and women, we're so close in terms of, like, we can only be here without each other. Is that if, they catch a cold, we sneeze, so to speak. So this is the funny thing, whenever kind of women act a certain way in society, but then they expect men to be chivalrous. It's kind of like you can't turn a certain corner. We're attached to you, and we're going to go around that corner with you, lady. So you can't expect us to stay on the old freeway of chivalry and have a close, intimate relationship with us where you go off-road. You veered off on another direction, and you're getting frustrated. Like, why aren't men with us? Why aren't? It's because you took a different detour, and you don't want men to be on that same path. While unfortunately, men are with you on that path, and women steer the social ship in terms of dynamics. I respect men, but biologically and culturally, women being the limiting factor in reproduction, men are downstream from women when it comes to sort of what one does, the other one follows. It's only the self-reflective guy that really pushes against his limbic system and his animal and lizard brain that can kind of go, hang on, my intuition's tingling, my spidey sense. This doesn't feel right. This isn't fair. Like, when you can use your prefrontal more and more, you can see the unfairness. And the unfairness is kind of like, this isn't going to work. So, yeah, it's kind of, there are consequences to women doing things. Frees women, frees men too. In a lot of ways, it's freed men much more than women, especially with the things we want. Sex is really easy to get. And the thing women wanted, which they say they didn't want, which they were convinced they didn't want, marriage and children, which they were told is prison, they don't get, or they think they can get later. Whereas all we kind of wanted when we were younger was sex. But if we were civil about it, we'd get it. But then we'd get children with a woman. Like, she'd get what she wanted, we get what we want. And then you'd stay together because you both were offering something that the other party wanted. Now, we're both living separately, which is fine for most guys. I think more guys are fine with it, other than in extreme cases where guys have psychological troubles. But women have that on top of structurally in their life, they're not getting what they want. It's kind of like they were fooled, they were sold a bill of goods that they're not getting, like freedom and travel and, promiscuity and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like, yeah, great, that gets old really quickly. It gets old a lot less for men. We can sort of do it for a lot longer. So it takes me now, like approaching 50, in your 40s, to go, okay, I've done that enough. I'm over it. It's not even exciting anymore. Whereas I think women get over it pretty quickly because it's so easy for women generally. What are some signs that your relationship with a person is positive or negative? I generally have trust issues due to past experiences. Thanks for what you do. Much respect. Thank you. Yeah, I'm similar. Again, notice the fairness. This is the thing. Guys who would be otherwise intelligent, considered themselves intelligent. I consider myself nominally intelligent. You can become a fuckwit when it comes to the opposite sex, because biology, like that sort of animal brain kind of comes to the front. It switches off the prefrontal. It's like, and then it's just all salivating, and your body just wants to procreate the eggs. And even for someone like me, I've never had that desire at all for children, but that limbic desire to sort of connect with a woman and physically, biologically connect with her is always there. So I want to do the act. And biology probably thinks, oh, well, as long as I get you to do the act, I don't care if you want children or not, human. Just do it. And biology is crossing its fingers that I make a mistake, which thankfully I never had. But some signs that your relationship is positive or negative is, again, how much you can, as a reflex, train yourself to think of your own needs first in a fair way. Be nice to people, be cooperative and fair, treat them the way you want to be treated, the golden rule. And when you're always calibrated to that, me, what do I think? They want this. Hang on a minute, what do I want? And always place that fairness in terms of whatever I give or my response to anything is genuine. Like, I have a right to say no to her. I have a right to, when she wants something and she gets annoyed or upset, or my family wants something, it's like, no, this is my life. What do I want? I'm not a puppet for anyone else. The more you can calibrate yourself to you as the first reflex by which you say and do anything and voice any opinion. You don't voice opinions in relation to, I don't want them to leave, I don't want to hurt their feelings, I don't want to lose this. You voice it from a perspective of, this is right, I matter, my opinion, what do I think? It's always you in a way that's not using or manipulating people, but you matter. And if they don't like your opinion, that should tell you something. When you're not allowed to speak, that's what used to get me angry. It's like, how come I can't have an opinion? That's like, F them. So calibrate yourself from your own perspective. You always speak from, what do I think? I have a right to speak. My opinion comes first. Everyone else comes second in a sympathetic, caring way, but I have to come first. You have to get used to being a bit selfish. Tough love for yourself. What's the Aussiest way to say I love you? You're a bit of all right. I don't know. Spetsnaz, you'd know. Question marks, guys. I see some questions without question and I'm missing them. Are you an antinatalist? No. I said in my last video, I've got nothing against having children responsibly. Do you have a diet you follow? Not strict. I just try and eat as little, especially on my own. I'm as strict as I can be on my own, because then I give myself the theme park. I give myself permission to sort of have fun with my diet when my friends are over, when I'm with my friends or with family. I will indulge in whatever, but not to excess. So for instance, when I'm just on my own and I cook for myself and I eat on my own, every meal is as healthy as I can make it. I don't measure anything or anything like that, but just everything is healthy as much as I can. When I visit family and friends, I'll have a pizza if they're having a pizza, but I'm not going to eat till I blow up. I'll have a few slices of something I don't usually eat, and then I go back to my routine. So my life is structured as much as I can. I exercise and so forth. So for me, discipline in my own life leads to happiness. And then when you're around other people, you allow yourself to engage with, like, you lower your personal standards just a little bit in terms of food and diet and things, and try new things and have fun with people. Don't change who you are, but when it comes to you, discipline yourself in your own world. The results you'll be a lot happier with. And then the more you do it, you actually look forward to more discipline in your life, because you know that the results actually gave you rewards. What's your opinion on kindness within reason? Yeah. If keep your own cup full, and the excess everyone else can have. That's kindness for me. Whatever spills out of my cup, that's what everyone else gets. And this is the thing, the more you can fill into your cup in terms of conversation, intellect, thinking, caring enough about your life, you fill this thing up. I don't know if you can see, it's black. You fill this thing up so much, you're always interested in and enthusiastic about your own life, then you're constantly having it gush over, and that's the stuff you give everyone else. But don't ask people to fill your own cup up. Got any books you read and enjoy? Yeah, last time I recommended a few. There are all, again, try and read widely. There are the classics. There are the philosophers like Nietzsche, Schopenhauer. What's that guy I mentioned last time? I forgot his name. There's, for me, Bukowski, Dostoevsky I liked more than Tolstoy. I didn't like Tolstoy that much, but he is a really good writer. For me, as a writer, he's more of an engineer. He's really, really refined, really, really elegant. But in terms of punch and street level waking you up, Bukowski, Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, a few others. I'm forgetting a few, but anyway. What are some signs that your relationship with a person is positive or negative? Oh, actually, I've answered that one. See, this is what happens when you go live. How does being brought up by a single mum act as a resistance to one turning MGTOW when there is a vacuum of being loved the feminine way? Yeah, I'd imagine if you grow up in the Church of Woman, where man is the devil, it's really hard to sort of break free of that religion. But like all pedestrian religions, a lot of people leave through one event or another, or they wake up, or they feel like it's not serving them well. I'd imagine there would be. Yeah, there would be. How? I'm not sure. I wasn't brought up by a single mum, but I would pretty easily see how it would be if you've been tattooed into you, and especially because your mum was the only one that had your survival needs met, and you idolized her. She was a goddess. It's really hard to sort of kill your goddess, but you have to. So yeah, I would say it would be hard. Don't know how though. Don't have empirical experience myself. Best MGTOW book. Specifically MGTOW? Nah. For me, the lessons within MGTOW are time-old lessons that can be found in a lot of the books we talk about and reference. Philosophy, psychology, Robert Briefold in terms of, what was he, a behavioralist, a psychologist? Can't remember what he was. Why do people still believe that man ruled society when most men bend the knees so easily? Yeah, it's a nice little trick. Hey, Karu. What is your take on the shift that you can see in some freedom, or is it person? Yeah, there's a D next to the S on my keyboard. Male spaces where some of the weaker men become the women of the environment and everyone tries to mount them like they're females. Yeah. I think it happens online more than in real life, but in real life, I think guys kind of razz each other. In the military, there's a lot of that tough love to toughen guys up. But online, I think because it's not in face to face, men just get lost in the denigration and beating a guy down, and there's no end to it. It's a loop. There's so much stuff. So much stuff online is cyclical. I've noticed. From online dating, it never gets to the person, it never gets to the date, or if it does, it never ends in a relationship. With men, how they treat each other online, they pile on, as you said. It's cyclical again. They just get caught in that first step and they relive that loop. So much stuff online is very cyclical. I think it's sort of connected to some of that. But because in real life, men would compete to get the money, to get the girl or whatever. But because there's no girl in front of us, we just kind of get stuck in the optimism of we continue to pile on. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but I think there's some of that in it. Where do you hold tension in your body when stressed? How often are you aware of or in touch with the tension in your body? Me, fairly often these days when I notice it. I don't like feeling ways I don't like feeling. It's really easy for me in front of ex-partners and so forth. I would trust the feelings like I don't like this. Something's wrong. There's a red warning sign. There's a red flag. I didn't like what she said. I might think about it, but I don't like it hanging there. I don't like not being able to sleep. It's on my mind. When it's on my mind, I'm not paying attention to my driving. I'm not paying attention to my creativity. For instance, notice when you lose your job. When you have a job, this is how I rationalize it. When you have a job, you think, oh, I can't wait to be rid of this job. I wish I wasn't working so I could have all this free time to do my hobbies and pastimes. You lose your job and you don't want to do your hobbies because you've got the unanswered question and the anxiety in your head. You want to alleviate and make sense of it. So you need to have tranquility in terms of living a freer and more peaceful life and to be able to create. So in terms of trusting my intuition is like when something's negative, I want to alleviate it. If I can't, it doesn't exist because I can't do anything about it. But that might be the way I'm wired. But I'm very aware of how I feel. I know a lot of guys don't like the word feelings. Switch it with the word intuition. But pay attention to how you feel because that's your male intuition telling you, your brain's telling you, hey, something's wrong. And most of the time we should be listening to our intuition. And I think as guys, you kind of know the difference between hormonal, sort of like, ooh, I just want to do this. Like I see a short skirt. Your intuition, your state is more the thinking rational side, your super ego, the father figure that kind of goes, oh, hang on a minute, don't ignore this. Listen to that. I try and listen to that as much as possible and address it. And when I listen to it, if there's stuff I can't do anything about, I let, ooh, that sounded great. If I can't do anything about it, then I try and let it go because it doesn't exist. I can't do anything about it. Some people probably get in touch with attention more than others. I think it's what works for you too. I noticed that with some guys, when a bit of advice that helped them really resonates with them like religion, and it really transforms a part of their life in terms of, say, listening to tension in the body or alleviating anxiety. Whereas if I hear the same thing, it doesn't really make as much of an impact. So the way you think what works for you makes a big difference. But for me, it's I don't like feeling uncomfortable. and I try and get rid of it as much as possible. And I know that avoiding it is the wrong answer because it comes up and catches up with you later. So I need to deal with it. And then I know it'll be real in getting rid of it. It won't come back because I've dealt with it. I faced it. How to help young men in a professional setting, services, therapy, without putting yourself at unnecessary risk. At what point is the juice not worth the squeeze in helping men? Yeah, that's a good question. Try and help guys. Talk to them. But you kind of get a sense whether the person wants help or is really resistant. If you kind of know that they're being really resistant, they've still got a lot of blue pill in them, that if you get a sense with this guy, if I say the wrong thing, he's going to report me to HR. Yeah, I would kind of not go very far with it, feel the person out. But when you can talk to some guys and you can tell they really want to get out of their hole, again, that comes back to your own intuition. When you can trust yourself more, you can trust what you're actually receiving from the world and other people. Then you can tell, now this guy is a guy I want to help. I see parts of this guy in me 5 or 10 years ago, and I want to help them because I want to help myself. Well, I would have enjoyed this kind of help when I needed it. Looking at chivalry in history, was it more about being a good person for God, country, or themselves? Women see for themselves. Women seem to have hijacked that, making all it's about them. Is chivalry bad for society? Is chivalry bad for society? Yeah, women have hijacked it. It used to be about God, but also women, I mentioned in a couple of videos ago, if you have something beyond you, it makes you think of other people. You're not the top of the food chain. When you get rid of something beyond you, and it doesn't have to be God, if you don't have an interest in something greater philosophically, religion's an easy philosophy, and every man needs a philosophy. It comes pre-packaged, that's ready-made. Here are the ways to live life, and it's great. But if you need to understand and look, why is it? Why does it make sense? Why is this good? I intuitively know that treat my neighbor well is good, but you start sort of delving into it and pulling it apart and making sense of it in your own life. Now women have become man's God, society's God, conveniently, because then they can manipulate that God. I did a video a while back, a couple of years ago, about women being men's Everest, and I think in this term, the women as goddesses are men's Everest. You know, that they look up to them as the thing to get, the summit to reach, and when they do, their life is fulfilled. That's their adventure, a woman. But then it's always looking at her, and you're just sort of this passive thing that doesn't really exist. You're a vehicle to get to the goddess. So yeah, I think women have become the goddess of today. They're the church. And the economy lubricates that church. At what point do you see a flipping from gynocentrist feminism matriarchy trajectory back to historical patriarchy? It's not going to go back to history. I think we're going to adjust in some way, and I don't know how we're going to adjust. Things will get too bad in certain respects. Well, they'll need to kind of go, okay, we've pushed that too far, now we'll need to go readjust. But I don't think we're going to go back to old ways. Life will adjust. Do you think most men get confused discerning the difference between being lonely versus bored when it comes to relationships? Yes. Yes. That's a good question. I'm trying to think in my past, was I bored or was I lonely? Was it both? Does one feed the other? I think lonely first, because I have no problem in solitude. My friends don't need to entertain me. I can sit with my friends all day and not be bored. So I think loneliness comes before being bored. You're not going to be bored with someone that you don't feel lonely around, because I am on my own a lot, and I'm not bored with my with my solitary life. I'm not bored with myself. I'm not bored with my simple family and life and things like that. So I think loneliness precedes boredom. Good question, though. It's a good one. I read nihilism as a challenge to overcome. Do you believe the Uberman is achievable or just an idealistic goal to shoot for? The latter. Having a great high bar, I think, is a good way to live, because the easy way is to relate to the lowest common denominator today. You know, if everyone's doing a lot of trash, then you don't feel bad because, you know, you're just doing what everyone else does. You're part of the tribe. And also, if you try and rise above, they knock you down. So it's like crabs in a bucket. I'd say it's a good bar, the Uberman. Be the best person you can be. I answered that before. Are you an antinatalist? No. In the 1990s, an indie filmmaker named Hal Hartley had a male character in one of his movies asked, perplexed, why did they exist? Any insights? I don't know what you mean. What fairy tales can we tell and write for young guys to avoid the trap, the parent trap? I don't think parenthood necessarily is a trap. Today, it's a massive potential trap compared to old days. I mean, there was always the trap of choosing the wrong person. Like, you can temporarily choose the wrong friend or the wrong job, but the ramifications are you can leave. The problem with choosing a wrong partner, a mother, a parent to your offspring, is they don't really leave. Even if you do or they do, they're always in your life. They're psychically embedded with you for the rest of your life. That's the trick today. So I don't think we should necessarily sway people away from procreation or living a more traditional life if that's what they really want. I don't want to make someone do what they don't want in life, but keep talking honestly with guys about this stuff. Don't be politically correct, speak intelligently, and don't be silenced. You know, don't give up, don't be afraid, don't be silenced. Be honest with yourself first and foremost. When you do that, this stuff in conversation gets out there. Then men hear this. Then all of a sudden you're at a barbecue and you're the only guy that voices an opinion that every guy around there knows, but he's too afraid to speak, and that gives other guys sometimes permission. So it's not a fairy tale. I don't say you don't need to tell them to avoid it, but encourage you guys to be more honest and speak openly, because if you got an opinion, there's nothing wrong with it. Remember question marks before and after so I can see. Guys, what is the focus of your channel? Apart from the name human, which should kind of tell you my perspective, is getting guys to think better, and develop their own ethics through being more honest and conversation and stuff like that. It's hard to pinpoint, but I think in one sentence, helping us all think better and introspect, whatever way that might be for you. What are your favorite coffee beans and what level of roast do you prefer? Um, I don't hand grind my coffee. I'm not that much of a connoisseur. I do appreciate good coffee. This is Aldi coffee. I do a combination in my Aldi machine. They come in little pods, similar to an espresso machine, but I prefer the flavour of this. I think the Nespresso pods taste like dirty water, personally. These have a lot more flavour. I do one pod of chocolate and one pod of organic coffee. So it's a half and half mocha, no milk. But the hot chocolate adds the milk and creaminess to it. So that's what I'm drinking. It's probably my favorite. But when I go out, I'll have a Skinny Magic or if I have to, a latte, I guess. I'm not a big fan of cappuccino. How do you convince your mind the monk life or the detached life is livable? Is it hard not to believe there is a unicorn out there? Yeah. Look, it's hard depending on how that addiction and the size of it in your brain. You know, if your psyche and your personality is a room, is the elephant massive? Is it taking up the whole room? By that I mean I can understand why it's really hard to sort of get over your addiction to women. If you can reduce that elephant to a smaller size by will. Mine was more that my stubborn intellect in wanting things to be real helped me strong arm that to actually make it appear smaller than what my biology was telling me. My biology was trying to increase the size of the elephant in the room, which was female. But my prefrontal is like, no, my stubborn, only child for the first 10 years of my life was like, nah, me. Like, why? I'm that stubborn child. So that helped me reduce the size of that elephant in the room. So it's not a clear-cut answer. I'd say don't take the mentally easy route if you know that your addiction to women is to a level. So I understand guys that because they know that they're just going to fold like a deck of cards and they can't speak up for themselves, they find it really hard. They can't find the words. They haven't developed the vocabulary. They avoid women. They go more monk. I understand and respect it because then you're protecting your boundaries more. You're making your life safer and you're respecting yourself. I get it. I would say if you can't naturally become more interested, if it's really hard work, it's like, if it's like trying to learn another language, like trying to learn, I don't know, Dutch when you're my age and you have no interest in it, then do the things that will help you be safer. But if you have an interest in philosophy and reading and you have that will to be right and you want to, sharpen that stone, do that, and that'll help reduce the lizard brain. It gets easier when you get older because the hormones get reduced, thankfully. But I was stubborn growing up too, so that helped me. I was fairly selfish in terms of my own space. I would be a typical guy up to a point. There was a real hard line. Like, I could be a doormat for a woman when I took my eyes off the road. But then there was a really hard line where when she wanted to get married or move in together or have unprotected sex or treat certain people in my life with disrespect, that was almost like the superego kind of butting in and strong arming, and like that's when I'd stand up for myself. But everything before then, I think I was like a lot of men that let women walk all over him. But it's really hard. There's not a one answer for all. Are you a rugby league or rugby union guy? I'm from Victoria. We don't see much of it. I always confuse the two. What's the one that doesn't have the spider? I like the other one better, where they don't have everyone in a spider and they chuck the ball off, on the guy who's piggybacking the other guy. I don't like that one as much as the other one. So I think it's League. I like League more. How long have we been going for? An hour and a half. Might wrap it up soon, guys. I don't want to go for too long. Advice for men dealing with chronic health issues and feeling helpless. Get help. If it's actual chronic health and diagnosed, get help. But use your wits about you. Don't get someone to help you who's an idiot themselves. There's a lot in the help, therapy, psychology community. The vast majority of them, they're dealing with their own problems and they foist it on you, and they probably, a lot of times they make it worse. I would say the first step is seek out guys, friends that you can talk to and help them alleviate problems, because talk to other guys first. If that's not helping, then find a good therapist that that you're in line with, that understands what you're going through. If you can, not a woman, especially if it's a lot of the stuff we're talking about. Okay. Red Pill Mentor, are there any stories of a young and you believe would be of value to men? I recalled your story regarding the young boy not saying sorry, and that was quite funny. Yeah, that was something you observe. A lot of my lessons are, because I think I'm just naturally self-reflective, and I like writing, so I'm a storyteller, so I'll see lessons in stories. So, I'm the kind of person that I appreciate good storytelling, because I can see the subtext and the writing and the lessons in there. Yeah, but a lot of it's observation. A lot of it is just empirical observation in my life. So when you notice something, when something's funny, especially behind a lot of humor, if you notice a funny situation like that kid standing up to his mum, it's funny. And I'm the kind of person who's like, why is it funny? Or if I'm angry, it's like, why am I angry? If I feel shamed by a woman, it's like, I don't like that feeling. Why am I being shamed? Hey, that's not fair. So I'm always asking why. So with the humor of that young kid, there tends to always be reflective lessons in those. So pay attention to those. Feelings are good, but after you've had the laugh, after you've had the good feelings or bad feelings momentarily after, it can be always healthy, if not mostly healthy, to ask why. Ask why it might have made you feel the way you feel, and there tends to be a lesson behind it. Let's keep going. My father's catchphrase is, a man needs to know his limitations. Did your father tell you interesting philosophical phrase? Not really. My father's a great guy, but he really didn't mentor me very much. I think he had his own people-pleasing issues regarding women. He was always trying to make his mother and his family proud, which I really felt sorry for him for, because he did everything the opposite. I always felt cared for and loved by my family and by him, but he didn't really mentor me, like especially when in terms of women. He always had a really good heart in terms of treating everyone well, especially women. But the women in his life, like my sister and my mother, they treated him really well too. And so I grew up in that. And then when I went out into the world, it was a massive shock. It's like, this is nothing like my family life. Like I got kicked in the guts a lot in my 20s before I started to realize it's like not everyone experienced the male-female dynamic like I did. So I learned by observation of what I thought I could expect, but my dad didn't really mentor me in men and women, unfortunately. I had to actually go out and seek them. And I think that instinct, I needed to find it because I kept getting kicked in the guts. That's why I am the way I am. I think that helped sharpen my introspection, my philosophical will to sort of matter, because that's the only thing that started to make sense. Oh, now life works when I take hold of it. Whereas I think when you have a male mentor like a father, it can actually help early on. I had to really unbake a lot that was baked into me by being passive and believing a lie. There is an old Taoist proverb that says a tree with bad wood will not be chopped down for its wood and thereby will live a long, full life, but why is a man who has no utility so hated by society? Because he can't be chopped down. You know, if you think and you care about yourself as a tree, then they'll think you're rotten. I don't know. Yeah, you come to terms with, like, I know I'm a human being from my own perspective, but aside from my own perspective, I'm a human doing. You need to come to terms with that in terms of the eyes of others, and that's fine, but I don't care. The point is, I calibrate myself as caring about myself as a human being. And to the extent that I allow people in my life is that they need to see that too, or I keep them at arm's length. They're not going to be an intimate part of my life, friends, family, or lover. So let people see you as rotting wood. Yeah, thankfully they won't chop you down, if I'm reading it correctly. Sorry, I might be misinterpreting what you're saying. I wanted to ask you guys, in terms of time, is this a good time to make this live stream? I got 143 viewers, so it seems like it's all right. I got mid-hundreds last time. I think I got 168 or 170, which was a bit more, but I wanted to change it up. Next time for a daytime one, I might not do it 11 in the morning. I might do it at 1 in the afternoon. I think that might be better for other people, because a lot of this time for some of Europe is like 3 or 4 in the morning. So if I make it at 1 in the afternoon instead of 11, then next time I might be able to get people in the world to wake up early, like 6 or 7, and catch guys who are going to bed late. So let me know what you think about the time. Write it in the comments. But yeah, I'm trying to change just to sort of accommodate people from different parts of the world. Okay. Anyway, if there's no more, guys, I'll say good day. This was a good one. And thanks for tuning in. We'll do it again. Let me know if this time was good for you, but I'll try and alternate to do sometimes late at night my time and sometimes early morning my time. I will talk to you later. Bye.